Hello and welcome to Intuitive Journey with Desiree. I'm Desiree Holmes, Scherini, your host, and today I am delighted to have as my guest Barbara Minton. Barbara holds a PhD in psychology. She's a trailblazing psychologist, musician, and neuroscientist whose innovative work bridges the powerful intersection of music, neuroscience, and emotional healing. And she's also the driving force behind an album titled Calm the Storm. Dr. Minton has dedicated her career to harnessing the therapeutic powers of music, drawing on both rigors, science, expertise, and profound personal devotion. And now that I'm done reading my cheat sheet, which I'm never very good at, but I wanted to, just bring all those pieces in that I'm just excited to talk to you, Barb, because there's so much that ties together here between psychology, science, music, sound, color, and frequency, and all of that. And I am hoping to learn more about all of that and what you do. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation. I love talking about this stuff, and I'm in the perfect place today because I'm a pipe organist, and
Wow.
I'm in a church because the roof of my apartment is leaking. So I
No.
came to church where I practice, and you can see these beautiful
That's
pipes behind me.
gorgeous.
Yeah, and the pipe organ is such an interesting instrument because it has the highest and lowest sounds of any instrument and all the different timbres. And so that was my original entree into music. And so it's kind of cool in this sort of spiritual,
Right.
beautiful place. Yeah.
That's a huge pipe organ. Are they all that big? I mean,
No,
not all of
but
them have that
there's a
range.
bunch of pipes you can't even see here. So this would be kind of a moderate-sized pipe organ. And I mean, pipe organs just alone, we could have a podcast about. They're such fascinating instruments. So they're very ancient and they're run by sound. And each pipe corresponds to one key on the keyboard. So there's a separate pipe
Incredible.
for each key, and air just goes through the pipe, and then some of the pipes are wood, some of them have reeds in them, actually like a saxophone or an oboe, and some of them are, you see the metal ones there, there's wooden ones around the corner, and they're all, designed, and they're all customized by hand in order to make these different sounds. And the pipes go from about 3/4 of an inch tall to 32 feet tall. So it's a mind-boggling instrument. There's actually 3 pipe organs in the world, I think, that have 64-foot pipes, and those make the very, very deep sounds. And what's interesting about that, even the 32-foot pipes, which would be a low C on the pedal, is about, I can't remember, it's either 14 or 16 hertz. You feel it, you don't hear it as much, and the body itself actually resonates to these frequencies, as you know, and the brain patterns these frequencies that are coming in, and that's how music has such a profound effect on you. And I was just practicing earlier before we started, and I'm working on this Metallica song. I'm doing like heavy metal on pipe organ.
Yeah, gosh.
and play a little Bach and then play a little heavy metal. And, I can just feel this in my body when I practice. These frequencies are just raining down on me. And it's quite a profound experience, to have as a musician and as a listener.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of ask you to not go all the way to the beginning, but maybe personally, how did you end up? What was your path? Of course, your degree in psychology and the traditional work that you might be doing clinically, but then what was your path to discovering something much more, I would say, energy based,
Yeah.
frequency based?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how the threads of your life all sort of come together at certain points. And I had really as a teenager, I got captured by the pipe organ, and I went to music school first for 3 years, and then I kind of burned out on music. And I was so fortunate to find psychology because I had sort of a second love in there. And I got actually 2 PhDs, one research degree and one clinical degree there, and then did worked for many years. You know, I've been in the field of psychology for 40 years doing many cool things. I moved to Alaska, did rural mental health there, got a float plane, flew around, you know, all this kind of went on all this other journey. And then I got into neuroscience-based interventions through a client I had in a rural area in Idaho who was on the autism spectrum, fairly severe. And you know, out in the middle of nowhere, there's just no services. And I was looking through the literature to find something that might help this child, and I found neurofeedback. And I don't know if you're familiar with neurofeedback or your listeners are, but it's basically a brain-computer interface where you train the brain in the direction of normal. And so that's what got me into the neuroscience thing, because I learned all about electroencephalograms and EEG and started looking at the brain and being able to image the brain. And then I started thinking, you know, there's all this literature out there on music, and no one's paying attention to it. It's sitting in academic journals. So, for example, music helps babies in neonatal intensive care unit breathe better, they get out faster from the hospital, they suck better, all these things. It helps people with anxiety before procedures, it helps people with depression, it helps people with ADHD. But we don't tend to use this as mental health or medical professionals. We have not integrated music into our practice. So I got excited about that. And then I started thinking, well, look, in this research, they just pick music like a Mozart piece or Enya or, you know, like we should be able to do better than this because I know EEG, I know music, I know how the brain gets stuck in these patterns that it can't get out of. Say for insomnia, your brain is stuck on, it doesn't know how to turn itself off. So couldn't we compose curated music to actually catch the brain where it's at and then move it into a different state? And so I had just gotten all excited about learning to play acoustic fingerstyle guitar. And I asked my instructor, like, hey, I got this idea, like, would you try this with me? And he said yes. And then I did pre and post brain imaging of these pieces we did, and I was just stunned. I mean, usually when you do science, the first thing you do is like, does not work, right? Like you're always proving yourself wrong. You're like, yeah, so this might work, but I was just stunning to me and to hear the feedback. And we don't have, I don't have vetted studies on this. I have case studies, but that's how it all came together. That's kind of the quick story.
Yeah, that's I love it. And
yeah,
just that
and it's different parts of my personality, right, coming together, this sort of kind of deep emotional relationship I have to music, and then also this more like I love data, I love this analytical, you know, like look at reality, look at the materialistic side, and it's such a beautiful like, you know, kind of woven together fabric of these parts of myself.
And it's lucky to be able to have access to being able to do that electroencephalogram or, you know, checking so that, you know, like I'll come up with ideas, but I have no access to hooking somebody up to, you know, see, hey, if this is really something, right?
Right.
And so that was really lucky that you have both worlds. So
Yeah.
you could tie something that seems, you know, out there to hard science and
Yeah.
have some proof that so people will say, oh yeah, right. Woohoo, yeah, music, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in the materialistic way that, you know, medicine is looked at, or treatments looked at. That's very seldom that in the past that you can like kind of take that leap. So
Mhm.
how are you being received by other psychologists, for
Yeah,
example?
good question. Um, But before I answer that, I will say if people want to look at some of these pre and post brain images after someone listened to the song, if you go to the website musicandhealing.net and you go to where it says new album and scroll all the way down, I've posted a couple of the maps of
Great.
some of our volunteers. And it's super cool to just see these dramatic changes in the brain
Mhm.
when people listen to music. So music is very, very, very powerful, and we need to use it more intelligently, both for ourselves and for other people. So, how has this been received? Um, the album's only been out a few months, so I guess some of that remains to be seen. What I
Okay.
would say is that there is interest in this work, but I think it's very hard the way we have our to me, they're kind of guild systems, right? We have the psychologists and we have the counselors and we have the hypnotherapists and we have the sound healers and we have
Right.
the medical people, and we all stay in our lane.
Mm.
And people like to talk about integrative care and personalized approaches, but there's very few people that are doing that. And part of what we're trying to do with these workshops that we're doing on music, the brain, and healing is telling people, look, you can integrate this into what you're doing without hardly any work. I mean, it's not that hard to tell somebody to take music home and listen to it. And people like to listen to music, they're doing it anyway. And so, what I'm trying to do is to help make this as accessible as possible. I will say that most people in traditional medical practice are not interested. Um, People in palliative care and hospice have more sort of appreciation of this, and they have already integrated music. Um, I'd say people, mental health professionals, that would be like that I deal with a lot, psychologists, counselors, social workers, don't think of this, but once you draw their attention to it, they're very enthusiastic. But there's just so much work left to do. I mean,
Hmm.
we're so ignorant about the power of music, and we're exposing ourselves to music that isn't helping us. And
Exactly.
if we
Yeah.
can start to have intentional use of music, it will help. It helps. I mean, music helps our immune system, the right kind of music, right? So why aren't we feeding ourselves like we try to feed ourselves a good diet? It would really be great to feed ourselves a good diet of music because it affects our physiology and our brains and our emotions.
Right. And I'm going to bring up two things that come to mind as you're saying that. One was Dr. Emoto uh, doing the experiments on water, and he exposed water that has some form of memory and reaction, absorbs something, from its environment. He played different musics or uh, to water, and then when he froze and looked at the crystals, there's people can go look this up. So Beethoven made a beautiful crystal, or but then hard, heavy metal made this messed up, frozen crystal. Is the pattern, the geometric pattern re- reflected the music, or even theirs, and are we're mostly made up of water, right? Our brains are, it's there's got to be some connection. The other thing I think of as a hypnotherapist with music is music can be a sort of hypnosis. You're listening to it, but you're not necessarily paying attention. It's just playing, and the words, and the and again, once that maybe discordant music, or music that's not conducive to positive brainwave, as it might be, as what you're talking about, that the words are saying things to you, and it's all getting absorbed. So more than even just the frequency of the music, what people are listening to, can, change how they're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I find trance music interesting because, from I do hypnotherapy also. From a hypnosis standpoint, I think it's very interesting that people seek this out. But to go back to the bigger point, I think, so when I first started working with people who had trauma, I had a subset of them who loved heavy metal music. And I was like, man, why are these people listening to heavy metal? I don't quite get that. And then as soon as I started thinking about it and talking to them about it, of course I got it, because the thing that's great about heavy metal is that it drives everything else out of your mind. So if you're swirling in sort of a ruminating, bubble of all this trauma, and you go to heavy metal, all that exists is the music. And it's such a relief. And what's sort of funny about that is, when I lived in Alaska, I had a lot of super intense clients, and at the end of the day, my head would just be spinning, and I would go flying. And the thing about flying, people think flying an airplane is all like wonderful, but it's actually, when you're trained as a pilot, you're always looking for the next disaster. You have to be really alert. You always have an escape plan. You're always ready for this and that. And what I found was the same thing. It like drove everything else out of my mind, because my job was to stay alive. Right? I was going and landing on a remote lake in my float plane, or on a little tiny strip in my wheel plane. It's like, no, you cannot be ruminating about your clients or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sometimes this music is actually very positive for us, this highly intense driving music. And then we have to learn, maybe we start there and then we learn how to bring ourselves down from that. It's sort of the same with breakup songs, right? Like, we have breakup songs for a reason.
You match your frequency, and there's something to be said for, you got to let it go through your system. You got to let yourself work it out, come from where you are. You can't just jump, um, transition from one, state of being into another. So you make a good point there that, you're here, and then you can work your way to there.
Yeah. And I think there's something about sort of acknowledging and empathizing with that. The breakup song thing is interesting to me, because, when you listen to a breakup song, you feel a connection, like other people have experienced this too. Like, it gives you empathy. And someone told me the other day about heavy metal, they were like, oh man, that music is so inspiring. I was like, really? And I went and looked some of the lyrics up of some of these classic ones, and actually they are pretty inspiring.
And some of them definitely. And then there's some that are just like,
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Or, and again, the lyrics, I think, make a big difference too.
Yeah.
What are they saying?
Not big on the screaming. I'd like to image somebody's brain and see what that's about. But anyway, the point of this is that I want to come back to the personalized medicine point, that when you know where you're at, when you hook into your body and your system, you can become an intelligent user of music. So if you get up in the morning and you're like, man, I'm kind of amped, like I need to just put in something, maybe not super chill, because it won't catch your brain, but just a little, you want to come down just a little lower than where you feel you are. If you're like, oh man, I'm all groggy and I can't get myself going, then you want to expose yourself to something just slightly faster than where you are. That helps lead the brain and the body into these states. But my own theory on this, and there's not good research, but my theory from EEG, which is that if you want to train the brain, you have to bring it down in increments. It trains better if you just bring it down or up in increments. And so that's kind of where I get this idea that that's what you want to do with music too, because the brain's a patterning organism, and the closer the pattern is to where your brain is at, the easier it is for it to find that pattern.
And that's exactly what I, talk to clients about when I'm, coaching them. People will talk about affirmations, for example. I am this and I am that. And I say, but your brain is not going to accept it if you're taking too far of a leap and it doubts where you are. So at least come to a neutral state first. If you're way over here, you can say, well, I'm not this, but I'm not that yet. And that's okay. Like you say, and it's because your brain is going to resist your thoughts, your mind is going to say, oh, that's not true. That's a great point you make about the music. Um, I'm not real familiar with it. I've, maybe used it a little bit just, for myself, but binaural beats, for example, where you have, two frequencies
Yeah.
to entrain the brain to something in between, to bring it between those two. Can you, talk about that?
Yeah, so it's the research is, if you look at the research studies, you'll find some studies find no effect and some studies find an effect. And the idea is that if you have two different frequencies come in, your brain is going to create a third frequency. And I think some of that is, what they report, some of the studies do report calming, and the studies that have looked at what the brain is doing basically haven't found that theory is being supported yet, but I think there's still a lot of work to be done in this arena. My thing on this is, if you like binaural beats and they're doing something for you,
Yeah,
just,
then do it.
go
Right.
ahead. They're not,
Right.
what I love about music is the probability of it actually harming you in some, irreversible way is extremely low. If you don't
Right.
like it, turn it off. If,
Yeah.
it's good. And so the reason that I stayed away from that with this album and I focused on other variables was that I don't want something where you have to wear headphones or you have to do
Right.
it this way or you
I know.
want it easily accessible. Throw it on your phone. If you have headphones, it'll be better because you can hear the lower frequencies, but it'll work anyway. You know, I think the beautiful thing about music is it's cheap and it's accessible. And you pay $20 to buy an album. If you like it, it's great. If you don't, you haven't just had to mortgage your house. And you can
Right.
come and see me and pay me a whole bunch of money as a therapist or as a neurofeedback practitioner, but maybe you want to try music or you want to add music in, and if it saves you 3 or 4 sessions with me, that's a lot of money.
So
I love music because of that.
tell me about the album then. So, what if, someone goes out, one of our listeners says, yes, absolutely, we should try this, right? So they buy the album. Is there a set way to use it? Different songs for different things, or what's the experience with the album?
Yeah, wow, thank you for asking me that. So this album, now the next album, we're working on an album for PTSD starting tomorrow. So
Yay, good.
exciting. Um, but this album, I'm gonna just aim my camera a little different. It's kind of cold. Churches, they're cold. That's why I have my coat on. During the
Yes.
week, they turn the heat down to save money and be good to the environment. But this album each of the songs are paced to be kind of seen as a unit. But if you download it, so the website's musicandhealing.net, you can listen to samples. When you download it, I've actually set the songs to be downloaded all separately. So if you want to play the album straight through, you have to create a playlist and put it in there. And there's a reason I did that. And that is that if you don't like a song, just don't put it in the playlist, leave it out. Or if there's one that really speaks to you, just loop that song for 10 times or something and before you go to the next one. And so I think when you start feeling something, for example, one of our volunteers that came in, bless her heart, she came in with a migraine. So this album is designed for migraine chronic pain and insomnia, although it stands alone just as pretty music. If you just want to listen to pretty music, you don't have to have those things to listen to it. But anyway, she came in with a migraine and she listened to one song and her migraine went away and it stayed away
Fantastic.
for 3 hours. Now, whether that would ever happen to anybody else, I have no idea. But what I would tell her is, maybe you want to loop that song 3 or 4 times and play that in the morning and at night before you go to bed and just let your brain take in those frequencies, because for some reason it went into a more normal state when it had that input. And so I think this is a beautiful way to use music to help support your own healing. You know, the music isn't healing you, it's providing a container within which your body and your mind and your emotions can start to heal themselves. And so that's kind of, in terms of the download part, that's kind of why I did that. But if somebody, I've had people who don't know how to set up playlists anymore because they just listen to Spotify. If you don't want to do that and you just want to have the album, email me and I'll send you the album after you buy. I'll send you the other one that just plays them all the way through. But there's, you know, the songs, the whole album itself, every single song is constructed to normalize the nodes of the brain related to this sort of idea of being stuck on, you know, where you're hyper registering pain signals, you're hyper activated, you're the migraine thing. I'll tell you, I'll be a science nerd for a minute. The migraine part of this became because I read an article about migraine as a dysrhythmia in the brain. And dysrhythmia means out of rhythm. So it's as if, like if you think of an orchestra, if all the violins slowed down and everybody else was playing at the regular rate, and the piccolos knew they were supposed to play with the violins, then everything starts to get off. And that's what they found in this study, where you have an alpha wave in your brain and then you have a wave that's nested within it called gamma. And so every time alpha rests, gamma fires. So if alpha slows down, gamma fires more because it knows it's supposed to fire in between the alpha waves. Well, gamma is a very interesting wave. It's actually associated with extreme meditators make a lot of gamma, and so we often think of it as good. But it's also a sensory registration wave. And so what it does is if you have light or sound coming in, you can experience it as extremely painful. And so they were hypothesizing in this is that it's this sensory registration of gamma that's causing a lot of migraine symptoms, like why you have to go in a dark room and you don't. So if you have migraine, you want to play this music very softly, not at normal volume. But so I was like, well, heck, we know music paces the brain. Like, why can't we use music to repace alpha? And so that's, that's why we put tempos in and phrases in and all these other variables in the music to help the brain repace back to a normal rhythm.
So in the music that's being played, are there also words then?
No, we don't have any words. And, lyrics are, gosh, that's just another whole really fascinating area. I think sometimes lyrics are just the best, Someone was telling me the other day, quite a young person, and they said, have you ever heard of this Carole King person who wrote this album, Tapestry?
No.
They're like, I've been playing that over and over.
All I've been listening to is Bad Bunny. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. But, part of the lyric, the music is great on that album, but also, when you think of the lyrics, you've got a friend, come on, like, so beautiful.
Yeah.
But if you're feeling friendless and you listen to You've Got a Friend, maybe you feel worse.
It's
and
too
so
far.
Lyrics,
exactly.
Too far. So lyrics can be good and bad. We did not use lyrics at all on this for that reason. And it's all just pure, it's beautiful, kind of melodic nylon guitar with that sort of
Mhm.
warm, intimate sound of the nylon guitar. And then the
Making me want to go turn that on after we're done here.
you should. Oh my gosh. And then
Beautiful music.
the deep sounds of the pipe organ. You know, I originally wasn't thinking of pipe organ, but these deep resonant tones of the pipe organ
Mhm.
create this sort of safe space for the warmth and intimacy of the guitar. And let me tell you, playing this live, I'm getting chills thinking about it. We played this live, and so all the frequencies are hitting your body. It's
Yeah.
just amazing.
Something I've noticed, and I haven't been very good about doing this on a regular basis lately, but I would sit and try to go into a meditative state. Meditate. Okay, I teach this stuff, but doing it myself, I'm like, okay, practice what you preach, right? And I often and I would put on. I have a heart math, um,
Mhm.
yeah, sensor, and
Use it
so
all the time.
isn't it great? And so I can almost like biofeedback and see what's going on with my my heart, you know, what's the right word? You know the word.
Yeah, heart rate variability,
Thank
yeah.
you, that. And
They
see if it
call it coherence, but yeah.
coherence, heart rate variability, but seeing if it's in the sweet, gets in that sweet wave spot,
Mhm.
right? And so I would, look at it and kind of meditate. And what I found was if I put on a recording of Om chanting, those deep
Mhm.
and then even if I did it myself, alone where nobody's watching me, so they don't think I'm like, right? It's like, leave me alone, I'm doing this. It would go right up like to a coherence, a very high coherence, and that wave would just sink right in there when it wouldn't with, just as I was, trying to do it on my own. It gave me a focal point, but it also creating and listening to that deep sound did seem to entrain my brain into that, higher, more coherent frequency.
That's such a beautiful example. And what I love about that is, let's say you're in nasty traffic in the car you're driving, and you don't happen to have your heart math, or you don't really want to be looking at that,
Yeah,
but
right.
you can put the chanting on, and if you're like, I want to go back into this more coherent state, and
Hmm.
now you have a mechanism that will help take you there. I love that. It's beautiful. The first person I tried, I wrote this, what I thought was dumb little song, and I took it in. I was training somebody in neurofeedback who had anxiety, and I said, hey, I'm got this idea, try this. Are you willing? You want to help me try this thing out? Kind person. She was like, yeah. And so she tried it out. And then the next session I said, oh, what do you want to do today? And she was like, I want to listen to that song. Long story short, she listened to that song for 60 hours of training. And she had intractable anxiety that she'd had for 30, 40 years that no one could treat. And her anxiety went away. And her last session, it was all really a wonderful session. And then at the end, she said, can I take that song home with me? Can I have a recording of that song? And it was similar. I just thought, wow, I never had even thought of it. I was like, what a great idea, because every time she listens to that,
Hmm.
her brain has now learned to go into this more regulated state. It's classically conditioned. It's both operantly and classically conditioned. And this will be an anchor for her. I mean, how
Hmm.
beautiful is that?
Exactly.
So
Perfect,
wonderful.
perfect example. And, as a hypnotherapist as well,
Yeah,
right? Placing anchors. And I work with a lot of people that have anxiety, a lot of young people. It
yeah.
seems to be, an epidemic of anxiety. And so, creating anchors uh, is so helpful. And I love the idea of the music because it's not just doing its magic, as you've pointed out, with the brain, but also it can be that anchor. And
Mhm.
so, to people that are listening, they, get your album, find that song, or if they already have a piece of music that always helps them, use that, use it. It's just so simple, right? Or like you
Yeah,
say, even chanting,
yeah, it's almost that we're so used to music that we're not attuned to its power or something in some funny way. Years ago, I had a teenage client that was very suicidal, and she found a song that made her feel better. And I really think this song kept her alive. I mean, she played it. I would see her. My office happened to be back and forth where the high school was, and she would have the earphones on, and she just said every time all these ideas that she should kill herself came into her mind, she'd play the song. I really think it kept her alive way more than I did. I was a support, but that was available to her 24/7.
exactly. Yeah,
I mean, just incredible.
it is. I have to say something here. I didn't touch my computer, but my raised my hand for me. Because I'm like, what is happening? And I see my hand,
It switched us back and forth, yeah.
yeah, and my hand was, and it says raise, hand raised. I'm like, I guess I had something to say and I didn't even know it.
That must have been it.
Or maybe it was AI. It wants to break in and has some comment. Uh, it's crazy. I have a question. So you did the brain wave, checking or seeing if there was a change. I'm curious, almost like a treatment, for example, imagining that music, or not even imagining, using music as an intervention, right? Have you noticed, did you go back and see if it made any permanent change, or is it something that can, with repeated dosages, like someone listening and listening, make a permanent change in the way the brain is working?
Yeah, I wish I had the money to do that. No, I don't have any idea.
Mhm.
However, I can tell you something out of the chronic pain and music literature, which is that in these studies that they did with chronic pain, where they had people listen to music, it did have an immediate effect. And if people kept listening, it actually had a long-term effect. And I'll tell you what's interesting about that from a kind of a neuroscience perspective. So with pain, it turns out that there's kind of two things going on here. So we have a pain network, and the pain network is the network that registers the sensation of pain.
Mhm.
And that network learns pain. So even if the pain is gone, the network has learned the pain, you'll experience the pain. And probably the best, example of this might be phantom limb, where you experience pain in a limb that has been amputated. It's not even there anymore. And it's because your brain has learned, oh, well, that's the input I should, like 3 times 5, you say 15, because you've overlearned that. You don't have to think about it. Well, your brain does the same thing with pain. It's like, oh, that pain's supposed to be there, so I'm going to generate it. And there's plenty of data on this. So um, music seems to calm down that hyper-registration of pain. And so if you listen to music over the long haul, it will help normalize that network. Now, what is also really fascinating is there's the pain network, and then there's the suffering network. And the suffering, have you seen the hypnotherapeutic book called Treatments That Work by Oxford University Press,
No.
Hypnotherapy for Chronic Pain? You would enjoy that. But so the suffering network is like, how bad does the pain make you feel? So you can have pain, but it doesn't bother you, right?
Hmm.
So you can actually in neurofeedback downtrain the suffering network. So if you have fibromyalgia, for example, you're like, yeah, I have fibromyalgia, but it doesn't really bother me. And
Hmm.
so some people do this hypnotherapeutically, some people do it in other ways, but you can also do it with music. And you know this from how you temporarily can get transported with music, right? So someone will say, oh man, I listened to Beethoven's, I don't know, Symphony number 3, and it transported me, and I didn't feel any of the pain or any of this or that. And so that's probably affecting both of these networks. But I do have colleagues that have chronic pain, and they've trained down their suffering network, and they're like, yeah, I experienced the pain, but I'm happy. So
Yeah.
so cool.
And that ties so well into hypnosis as well, that it's, having the focus shift.
Yes.
If you're focusing on the pain, then you're suffering more. And in hypnosis, when someone gets to that nice deep state, they don't feel their body. They just
Yeah.
realize, I don't even feel my body. It's like they are leaving any sensation behind, which is a interesting thing. So I like that the thought that I think, where are we focusing on? And as you say, I personally have experienced, I have the same pain. It's maybe didn't go away, but I'm just go, yeah, it's that's there, and I don't pay attention to it. It doesn't hurt like it used to. Um,
Yes.
Also, like say, if you have a new pain, a new
Hmm.
injury that is instead of being acute becomes chronic, you get used to it,
Yeah.
right? Or you could focus on it, and it's where we pay attention as well. I think, you ever notice how if something hurts and then you stub your toe, that
Yeah,
your
right.
toe hurts, you forget what else was hurting, right? And
Right.
um, I, I
Exactly.
I think also another good example of that is, you think of, maybe watching these horrible, like say, war movies. Somebody's been shot or whatever, and they're still going.
Yeah.
Uh, and they somehow, the focus, the adrenaline as well as the focus overcomes any pain. And then when they slow down, they're like, oh shoot, you know, this
Yeah.
hurts. So
Right, we have these
yeah,
gating mechanisms. But I think what's interesting in the long-term effects of music on chronic pain, they don't know the mechanism. Oh, we switched again.
raised my hand
Why
again.
does that? Your magic.
I'm sorry. No, my
Your
computers.
magic.
I told
It's
you when,
funny. It's
before
funny
we came
why
on, my computer was acting weird.
it's funny why
Okay.
it switches the pictures
Oh,
when
to
it.
put me first in line
Oh,
on
to
my,
put you first. Oh, you're first
yeah,
in line.
to
Okay,
say
well
yeah.
that you deserve it. That makes.
Okay. Okay, computer.
But anyway, we don't know the mechanism in the music studies because they didn't have, they didn't use EEG. But
Uh-huh.
still, I think that's quite amazing that for people with chronic pain, I would definitely put yourself on a diet of music. I mean, again, it's not going to hurt you. And if it takes some points of pain
And
away,
how
what do
easy.
you do? It's so easy. That's
Yeah.
what I love about music. It's so accessible. It's so easy. You can listen to it while you're cleaning the bathroom. It's
Hmm.
wonderful.
So with this album, you say it was focused on pain, suffering, that area, migraines, for example. And your next album is going to be focused on PTSD. So how do you make a choice? Like what are the different tones, tunes, frequencies that you've chosen, and how did you decide what goes into one versus the other?
Yeah, well, what I did is looked at all the brain maps. So I have hundreds and hundreds of quantitative electroencephalograms. So what that is um, when you collect EEG, we now have normative databases, and so you can compare your EEG to people who are basically functioning well, and you can look and see where are your networks out. So is your anxiety network out? Is your pain network out? Is your PTSD network out? And there's a lot of good networks too, right? There's the
Yeah.
pleasure network. I mean, people trained to, have a better golf game and all this
Hmm.
kind of stuff. So there's just a ton of these networks. So I took people who had chronic pain uh, and migraine, and I told you a little bit about the extant research on that, and insomnia, and looked at all their brain maps and looked at all the interplay of these different networks and where they were stuck and what frequencies they were firing in. And so that's where I started, and that's the same thing with PTSD. What's interesting about PTSD, which you'll know right away as soon as I say it, is PTSD is not a unitary disorder. It's a bit of a junk category, right? So you have the florid PTSD symptoms that you get right away when something's happened that's traumatic. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's all the nightmares and the, kind of swirling thoughts. But that's really different from 30 years later when
Yeah.
you're not maybe swirling in your thoughts as much, but you're startling or you're sort of floating off into the ether, what we call dissociation. So you have like a dissociative state, you have these ruminating states, you have just hyperactivation, you have all this stuff, and they're all associated with different patterns in the brain. And so this album is going to have a wider variety of songs because there's a wider variety of brain states reflected in PTSD, so it will be more challenging. But that's what I do is I start with the data
Uh-huh.
of what these brains look like and then compose using different elements of the music, timbre. I mean, I can go through some of them if you want to, but we might not have time.
Okay.
Different elements of the music that would lead these brain states, kind of nudge them more towards normal.
Okay. Yeah, I love it. That's really fascinating. It's yeah, I don't know if you've heard this or if I just thought of it or if you use this already, but music is medicine. You know,
Yeah,
it is just such a healthier, yeah, at least first step. Yeah, and so many of medications are just automatically prescribed. And this is why I love hypnosis, for example. So many, doctors just, well, take this, take that, take this, and it has all that range of side effects that could not be great for you. Whereas, maybe even as a first step, see if you can't find relief with something like you say that is only has potential benefit, right? Then, harm free to the rest of your system, and so I just really like what you're doing.
yeah,
And
well, thank you.
there.
Yeah, and just to comment, in the field that we have music therapy, and so this is why they make that distinction, music therapy versus music as medicine. Music
Hmm.
therapy is done by a trained music therapist, kind of trained and licensed music therapist, and that is not what I'm doing. I actually am not that thrilled about the term music as medicine because it sounds like
Okay.
your music is doing something to you, like you take a pill. And I don't think it's quite like that, but I do think whatever intervention you choose, or if you're just looking to optimize, you can always add music in. It's
Hmm.
not, these aren't either or types of
Right.
situations. And so if you really want to start with the least restrictive thing, you can try music or some other simple interventions. And I guess the other thing I really want to say is that one of the things many, many people are struggling with are the foundational activities, and music is not a substitute for adequate sleep and a good diet and reasonable body movement. uh,
Well,
and sometimes people want to kind of jerk themselves around with music or stimulant
mm,
medications or other things. And, we're struggling right now, I think, as a culture with these very foundational activities. Before we had electricity or anything like that, and we didn't have TV and we didn't have radio or the internet, we all went to bed early and we got more
hmm.
sleep and we got up early and took care of the cattle or whatever we had
More
to do.
physical activity. What a big difference.
Yeah,
What a
and we
big
really now
difference.
have to
Yeah.
work on this too. And so I just want to, put a footnote in there about that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing stands alone. It is,
Yeah,
you have to
that's
have a
such a,
holistic approach to your well-being, and music is definitely, uh, like you say,
intentional use, yeah.
intentional
Intentional
listening.
listening.
Yeah, will make a big difference, just like intentional eating and lifestyle choices that
Yeah.
we get. People don't think about what they're doing. So, they just don't stop and say, well, wait a minute. why am I, doing this? And maybe there's a different choice. And music, of course, can be, actually used, yeah, and engaged in a different way than just listening to whatever's playing.
Yeah. And the one thing I kind of leave people with is, really think about how your body is registering the music, like check in with yourself, because a lot of times we don't do that. We're kind of like, oh, that's good, cool, or I don't like that. And liking is one thing, but it's another thing to really check in with what the registration is
Hmm.
intuitively with yourself, and you will learn a lot. I
Yeah,
can guarantee you that, yeah.
I appreciate you bringing that up because that's a lot of what I uh, try to teach is you're recognizing your body, mind, and intuitive connection. Because your body, if you pay attention to the sensations, uh, tightness, where you're feeling something will tell you a lot about your environment.
Hmm.
And start to tie those things together. So same, I guess, with listening to music. How's my body responding? Does this, feel good, or does it feel like I just swallowed a rock?
Right.
you know, and
Yeah.
if and then you know skip that song, right? If it's
Yeah, skip that
and
song.
keep going and be in touch. I love that. So we're close to the end here, and I just want to ask if there's anything else you'd like to add as well. Let the audience know that your details and information will be in the details on the
Yeah.
description here. But how can people reach you if you want to be reached? Do you work with people directly? And anything else you'd like to share?
So the website's musicandhealing.net, N-E-T, and if you download the album, buy the album, I would love to hear feedback, and you can email me off the website, and I will do my best to respond. I value people's comments and questions, and good or bad, I love to hear it. Because I'm working on this. It's a work in progress. We're going to have our next album. I'd love to have feedback about what people found good and bad. Um, and then, we do workshops and concerts, and we have a workshop, Music, the Brain, and Healing, which is, I mean, there's workshops are so much fun because we always have live music there. So it's like, and we do give CEUs for mental health professionals if people need CEUs. So that's always a bonus. But yeah, we do concerts and workshops and things like that. But I think the biggest thing for me is just really getting the word out there about the power of music and its healing capacity, and then using it. Like, actually, you can use this to make yourself feel better. And in some cases, it has really changed people's lives. One just a little interesting footnote is that we've gotten some emails from people saying that they felt a new sort of spiritual connection as they listened to these songs. And I found that fascinating because it almost seems like for people that are attuned this way, as the brain starts to regulate, almost like some sort of a portal is being
Mm-hmm.
opened up or something. I don't know, but I found that very fascinating. So people that are interested in that aspect of it, I'd love to kind of hear from you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Probably, in listening to the music, it may, like you talk about the brain waves, take you into sort of a theta state,
Oh yeah,
into a
totally.
meditative state. And that's where, you know, as someone who does spiritual hypnosis, that it does seem to open up the blocks, the conscious blocks to what's out there.
Yeah,
Connection.
there's a guy that's really amazing that you might be interested in, and some of your listeners. His name is Jeff Tarrant. He's a psychologist in Eugene, Oregon, and he does neuromeditation. He does regular meditation, but he also does neuromeditation where you use EEG sensors to help move you into a meditative state. And he also wrote a book about psychics and mediums, and he's now looking at helping people connect to a spiritual I don't know, whatever, spiritual
Yeah,
relationship, and what the brain does, how we can move the brain into that. And so anybody who's interested in that might want to go find, it's Tarrent, Jeff Tarrant. He's an amazing guy, very science oriented and very intuitive. I love that combination, yeah.
absolutely, because we just need more of that, like, what you've done, and to not, to show that woo woo is real. There is a scientific basis to so much that has been dismissed.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Barbara, thank you so much for being my guest. I really enjoyed this. This is
Well,
fascinating.
yeah, well,
And
thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff, as you can tell, so I
it's,
appreciate the opportunity.
well, thanks for being here. And
Okay.
to my audience, I hope you'll check out Barbara and um, her information that she shared. And I'll see you next time on Intuitive Journey with Desiree.